January 21st, 2024. Sevilla takes the field, one of the perpetual European contenders from the Spanish league, and they are run off the pitch. They are defeated 5-1, and their opponents take over top of La Liga with that result. By January, we're over halfway through the Spanish season, so whoever's doing this is a serious title contender, and they are. Their name just doesn't sound familiar. The winner of that match against Sevilla was Girona FC, and they're having one of the most surprising seasons in a major European league ever. And the season is not over yet. Girona sits just 2 points behind Real Madrid at the top of the table after 23 matches, and they lead all of La Liga with 52 goals in that time frame. If Girona is able to beat Real Madrid a few days after I record this weekend and win the league eventually, we're looking at a Leicester City level surprise here. But there is one major caveat I can't wait any longer to bring up. Girona is owned by Citigroup, the same ownership group that owns Manchester City, New York City FC, and a host of other clubs across the world. This has been used to discredit the miraculous season that Girona is having, but when you look a little deeper, when you peel back the cover and look back at the last 10 years of Girona's history, what is happening is ridiculously remarkable regardless of the net worth of the owner of the club. Girona is also an old club from the city of the same name on the Catalonian border with France. It was founded in 1930 in a cafe called Narat in La Rambla, and it was formed to replace a club that had just dissolved previously. You see, Unió Esportiva Girona had dissolved for economic reasons, and the reformation of a new club in Girona called Girona FC was able to take its place in the third division of Spain. They didn't have to start at the bottom. And it was in these middle tiers of the Spanish football pyramid that Girona would then spend the next 80 plus years. It spent 3 seasons in the 5th tier, 15 seasons in the 4th tier, 42 seasons in the 3rd tier, and 24 seasons in the 2nd tier. Now you're caught up. But as you probably noticed, there was no time spent in the top tier of Spanish football, ever. At least until the past 10 years. If you go back 20 years, Girona was in the 4th division, and in 2007 it managed to start a double promotion all the way up to the 2nd division by 2009. This was, up to this point, really the peak of Girona's history. They spent 6 years playing in the 2nd division until they built a club that looked good enough to go all the way into La Liga. In 2015, Girona spent the last 6 match days of the season in 2nd place, which is a spot for automatic promotion up to Spain's top division. But on the final day, it all fell apart. A win was enough to keep Girona in 2nd place to automatically qualify, and they scored to go up 1-0 against their opponents, Lugo. But in the 89th minute, Pablo Caballero of Lugo arrived at the back post to head home a cross and break Girona hearts. The video is hilarious and painful because the groan in the stadium is audible when the ball goes in. It's so quiet when the goal is scored. Just a few minutes, nearly seconds away from their first ever trip to the top flight of Spain, taken from them right at the end. But there was some consolation. Finishing 3rd meant Girona ended up in a 4-team playoff where the winner would get promoted to La Liga anyways. The semifinal put them against a team called Zaragoza, and they beat them 3-0 at Zaragoza in the first leg. But as if that 89th minute goal against Lugo wasn't enough pain, they lost 4-1 at home to Zaragoza in Girona, and that meant Zaragoza went to the playoff final on away goals because they scored 4 in Girona, where Girona only scored 3 in Zaragoza. It's worth mentioning Zaragoza didn't have a happy time either and didn't get promoted because they lost on away goals to Las Palmas in the playoff final, so nobody ended up that happy, but Girona had to endure back-to-back heartbreak. The following season, Girona wasn't nearly as good. It had 16 less points in the league after their 82-point total last season, but it still managed to make it into the playoffs. The particularly brutal part about their season the year before is that the 2 teams that achieved automatic promotion had 75 and 74 points the next year, far less than what Girona put up the year before while finishing 3rd. Back in the playoffs, Girona ended up against Cordoba, and after losing the first leg 2-1, took it to extra time and scored in the 118th minute to go to the final. But of course, Girona would lose the playoff final 3-1 on aggregate to Osasuna. The story of heartbreak continued another year. And in this 3rd year of having an incredibly competitive team, Girona was once again in the mix, but it started to feel the pressure of potential promotion down the stretch. In 2017, Girona managed managed to get just 2 points from its final 6 matches. It really tried to give away a top 2 spot, but it couldn't. Despite that near bottle, Girona finished 2 points clear in 2nd place and automatically qualified for promotion to go up to La Liga for the first time in its 87-year history. And that promotion was incredibly important for a number of reasons. Not only did it break an impenetrable seal on the top division for Girona, it also attracted the interest of a particularly well-funded ownership group. After its promotion, City Football Group bought 44% of Girona FC. That share now sits at 47% in the modern day. And the momentum from their first ever promotion to the top league, combined with the bump that you get from a new owner coming in with lots of new ideas, propelled Girona to a tremendous first season in La Liga. They finished in 10th place with 51 points, playing against all of Spain's big boys. They were ahead of Real Sociedad. They were ahead of Athletic Bilbao. The problem was there was a sophomore slump after this explosion of energy. You see, the following season, Girona got just 37 points and finished in 18th, which is an automatic relegation spot back down to the 2nd division. 2 years of glory, and that was it. Even with City Football Group, they were going back down. It's worth mentioning at this point that City Football Group, while it does own Manchester City, which is wildly successful, also owns other clubs that are not. Its ownership is not a guarantee of success. French club Troyes was promoted and then relegated again, owned by Citigroup since 2020, and Palermo, which was purchased by Citigroup about a year and a half ago, they are still sitting in the 2nd division of Italy as well. So it's not like everything they touch turns to gold. They have multiple clubs in major footballing nations and league structures that have not been able to stay or get to the top league. And for Girona, the return to the 2nd division brought back painful memories. As Yogi Berra would say, it was deja vu all over again, because Girona found itself right back in the playoffs the very next year after getting relegated. Girona managed to navigate a tight semi-final to get to the promotion playoff final against Elche. The first leg ended 0-0. These were the empty stadium COVID times, so it was all to play for in another empty stadium in the 2nd leg against Elche. The match started off competitive, and then there was a red card in the 61st minute for Girona. That didn't matter though. Girona held on the whole 90 minutes. The issue was the added time after the 90 minutes. In stoppage time of the second half of a 0-0 match on aggregate in the playoff final, Pere Mia of Elche broke free unmarked at the back post and headed home a dagger goal to send Elche up to La Liga and knock Girona out again. The following season, because of course you knew this was coming, Girona would cement its place in yet another promotion playoff. This meant that Girona spent 4 of its past 7 seasons in a promotion playoff, and 2 of those 7 seasons were spent in the league above with no chance of making the playoff at all. Girona entered the semi-final, won the first match 3-0, and used that to book another ticket to the playoff final for a 2nd consecutive year. The first match at Rayo Vallecano did not start well. They went down 1-0, but Girona scored 2 goals on the either side of halftime to take a 2-1 lead home. All they needed to do was not lose, and they would be going back to La Liga. Now stop me if that situation sounds familiar, because Girona would not be going back to La Liga. Rayo Vallecano scored 2 first-half goals, and despite getting a red card in the 56th minute, managed to hang on to win the second match 2-0, which meant the aggregate was 3-2 to Rayo Vallecano, and for a 4th time in 7 years, Girona was defeated in the promotion playoff. Somehow, always in heartbreaking fashion. Girona was a cursed club. They were doomed to just live in a purgatory of promotion playoffs, desperate to try and get back to that one season of survival in La Liga in over 90 years of history as a club. In the following season, looked like things were finally starting to get worse. And this was in 2022, mind you. Girona entered the final match day not safely in the playoff. They needed some sort of result to even consider getting themselves into a playoff position down at the last playoff spot, which is 6th. The problem for Girona is that they drew the last match of the season. That meant they were tied for 6th place with Oviedo at 68 points. And Oviedo's goal difference was plus 16. Girona's goal difference was plus 15. But this moment, this crucial moment where most league tiebreaker rules would lean on goal difference, turns the entire fate of Girona. Because Spain's 2nd division is different. Spain's 2nd division values head-to-head results over goal difference, and Girona beat Oviedo 2-1 earlier in the season. Their other match was a 0-0 draw, meaning the last playoff spot goes to Girona. If this was the 2nd division of England, for example, Oviedo would have gotten the last spot, and who knows where Girona would be right now. As fortuitous as it was, the first match of the playoff was a disaster. Girona hosted Eibar and conceded early early, and even though Eibar got a red card before halftime, Girona couldn't score. It was 1-0 Eibar going to the second leg. But Girona was just saving all its magic for the second leg because Borja Garcia scored in the opening minute of the second match, and then it went all the way to extra time, but Christian Stuani scored in the opening minute of extra time to give a 2-1 win on aggregate to Girona, a third playoff final in 3 years. The first match of the two-leg final was in Girona, and Girona dominated. They outshot Tenerife 16-3. Girona had 70% possession, so naturally, the match ended 0-0. The return leg, of course, was at Tenerife, which is an island off the coast of Africa that also is part of Spain. The match was much closer, but Stuani scored on a penalty kick right before halftime. But with Girona's history, you knew that wasn't it. And of course, Tenerife scored an equalizer in the 59th minute. Girona currently had the advantage on away goals, but it was on a knife's edge until the football gods finally smiled down upon Girona in these playoffs by gifting them an own goal off Jose Leon to put them up 2-1. It was a near impossible task for Tenerife to come back at that point, and Girona would go on to score a third goal. They were headed back to La Liga, finally, in 2022. The misery was over, but catch your breath because this lovable loser from the second division is somehow about to become better than Barcelona in the next 2 years. And it started last year, when Girona, much the same way it did the first time it got into La Liga, exploded with a surprising amount of quality and managed to finish in exactly the same position, 10th. A huge surprise turn for a team that had only spent 2 years in the top flight ever to that point. And the quality on the team had been overlooked going into last season because, well, the team had struggled to get out of the second division for so long. But after getting 10th in the Liga, they couldn't hide their talented players anymore. Girona lost a few key pieces after their huge season, and that turned this summer into a very important make-or-break moment for the club. And the impact of City Football Group's ownership was not going to be as important as you might think because of La Liga's financial fair play rules and the way they choose to apply them. You see, in Spain, clubs are told in advance how much they are able to spend on salaries in a year, and Girona was told going into the summer they would only have $55 million to spend on their team's entire salary, which is just 13th in La Liga. That is obviously a tough ask for a team that is potentially losing multiple key pieces. So Girona had to think outside the box. They had to rebuild their club using loans, free transfers, and out-of-the-box small transfers from lower leagues. They managed to go to Barcelona and talk them into sending them Eric Garcia and Pablo Torre. They then tapped into the City ownership network to loan in Savio from Troyes in France. They got their hands on experienced defender Daley Blent and signed him for free. And they also managed to keep Paulo Gazzaniga, who was on the team last year on loan, signing him end of contract for a free transfer. They also kept another loanee from the previous season around when they secured the signing of Yangel Herrera from Manchester City for $5 million. They even went to the Ukrainian league in Dnipro to get Artem Dovbyk for under $8 million, the big physical forward. And basically, to a player, the signings worked out perfectly. Obviously, they were able to utilize the City Football scouting network more effectively than other clubs in the City Football Group, and they built a team that plays that City Football Group style, all while staying within that budget of $55 million. And despite the fact they still lost a few important players, a lot of people could tell this transfer window was pretty good. FiveThirtyEight projected Girona to finish in 10th place in the league at the start of the season, while ESPN wrote in the preseason they should be too good for the drop, but repeating a top 10 finish is a big ask for the Catalan side. Opta Analyst projected Girona as an 11th place finisher, and they gave them just a 0.9% chance of being able to finish anywhere in the top 4. They gave them less than a 1 in 1,000 chance of finishing anywhere in the top 2. I guess we're just living in that simulation, though. Girona, as of this recording, has played 24 matches, 17 wins, 5 draws, 2 losses. It's beaten Atletico Madrid 4-2, Barcelona 4-3, and only lost twice to Real Madrid both times. Girona's well ahead of Barcelona in 3rd place. They're clearly in the top 2, and by the time you're watching this, they're likely more than 10 points safe in the top 4 Champions League positions, which is insane, all while having the 2nd best goal difference in the entirety of the Spanish top division. Daley Blent has become an every match defender on an elite European team. Artem Dovbyk is at almost 20 goal contributions. Savio has over 10 goal contributions as well. It's a club playing its 4th ever top flight season in Spain that's not running with, it's running out ahead of some of the biggest clubs in Europe. And yes, being in City Football Group has helped them immensely, particularly with scouting, but the limitations placed on them by infrastructure and FFP still preserve the soul of a club so often left on the doorstep of greatness. And they certainly must be enjoying their reward for surviving so many heartbreaking moments. It's an unbelievable season, and who knows how it will end, but it's already captured the imagination of so many heartbroken fan bases that would have, up till this season, looked at Girona as an equal and a friend, and now they just watch on in awe. If you enjoyed this video and haven't already, please do subscribe, and if you want to read or watch more about this story, the links to everything we use for research in this video are in the description. And if you want to keep binge watching videos, this is the story of a fan who's alone, or was alone, and then he saved his club. A pretty heartwarming story. Literally was alone, like by himself.